Yeah, welcome to this meetup. We've come a long way. I'm going to explain this on the next few slides. We have this funny little logo that we never really agree about because, I mean, there's a history. We are actually from PASS Germany. We're the Regionalgruppe Berlin. Yeah, that's how we started. And well, SQLPASS Global doesn't exist anymore. We're sorry about that. But SQL Germany, PASS Germany, is there, it's live and kicking, but they didn't offer any type of meeting during the pandemic. No local meetings, local virtual meetings, nothing like that. And we really wanted to keep this group together and keep talking. And so we did Data and AI Meetup Berlin. Yeah, but now we're back as PASS Germany is back also, and we're part of that again.
Today, this is not a question as both our speakers are English speaking.
So, no, right. And this is not a question. Today we have to speak English. Normally we have a question because this is a global city and we've been doing presentations in English, well, for a few months now. And sometimes we try to find out if that's okay for people. But today it has to be okay for everybody. So,
and since today we don't have like a slideshow presentation, there's also no way to interrupt the speaker because this is a discussion panel, so even better.
Absolutely.
Fast jeder Holländer kan ook Duits verstehen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jeg tviler på dere forstår norsk like godt.
Okay, and we are recording this, and normally, if everyone agrees, I publish this on the YouTube channel of my company after a few days, but that's why I started the recording. So let's talk about that afterwards if we actually want to publish this, but I think it might be pretty interesting. And actually, whenever I publish one of those videos, even though they are usually about an hour long, an enormous amount of people are watching them. So apparently there is some need to do this. And having said that, that's all. That's all for now. Let's kick off the discussion. Let's start and jump right in SQL Server 2022.
You can. So maybe it would be nice for Andre and Johan to briefly introduce themselves in case anyone doesn't know them yet before we kick this off.
Right.
And I'll try to take the role of moderator more or less because I'm not the expert here and I have to have some function other than providing beer.
Which is an important function.
Yeah, it's important. And having a soundtrack, and that's also a unifying element because Johan as well as Andre have excellent taste in music.
Whoa! Oh, will we have a soundtrack in the background?
No. I think that might be disturbing on the call.
We had Andre already in our meetup. Also, by the way, it's a very popular recording. Your recording, although it's far longer than an hour. If you check out the YouTube channel of Ceteris, you are fully recorded and everyone loves it. It has a few thousand people that actually saw it all the way through. Yeah, but as you've been here before, let's start with the newbie. Johan, would you introduce yourself quickly, please?
Yeah, I don't look like a newbie, but I'm new in the meetup, so that's fine. Yes. My name is Johan. I'm a Norwegian MVP. I work for a small company you might have heard of called Deloitte. I am an architect mostly in these days. I've been working with SQL Server, I think not as long as Andre, but almost as long, so 1999-ish something. But these days I do mostly PowerPoints and draw pretty pictures, or what I like to think is pretty pictures. But yes. That's about it. And I also do secondhand stunts as Santa Claus and David Letterman.
Yeah, actually, when we were in Seattle together, we were asked several times whether that was David Letterman.
If you get better seats in the restaurant, why not?
Yeah, free beer, maybe.
So Andre, who do people confuse you with?
No idea.
You have to work about yourself, maybe?
So, SQL Server, I started in IT since in 1989. Yeah, 89. So Johan and myself are roughly the same age. And
you're actually younger than me.
Yeah, a little bit.
By a month.
A whole month.
Yeah.
I started doing SQL Server stuff in the mid-90s somewhere. And the last years, I find myself basically in Azure 99% of the time. Synapse, Databricks. I had a chat with somebody about Cosmos DB earlier today. For some reason I get to do the crazy stuff. I like to do it. People give it to me. I'm like, yes, bring it. A couple of weeks ago, I ran into the limits of Synapse Analytics, believe it or not. Yeah, I talked about the maximum space to the Synapse engineers at Microsoft, and they went, no idea, we've never seen that. So they couldn't tell me what's going to happen. That was fun. Yeah, so what do I do? I'm a freelancer. You could say some like a hands-on architect or something. One of my customers has me in the paperwork as a architect for niche systems. Maybe that works. I don't know. I get creative sometimes. But yeah, that's me. I live in Amsterdam. I'm a Dutchie, so that's it. I can understand German.
And that's,
I learned.
that's why
Yeah.
Marcus is also wearing the orange t-shirt to honor you.
Yeah. And I'll never forget the Brexit cat. I hope it's alive and well.
Brexit cat. We have a Brexit cat.
You have a Brexit cat.
You mean me?
Yeah,
you mean me?
I mean your cat.
Unfortunately, she died.
Let's switch to.
Now on to something completely different.
No. All good. She was 15 and a half, which is really old for a Maine Coon, and she passed away about half a year ago. So she well.
You can watch her on the video. She's actually on the video of your talk.
Oh, cool. I might do that.
Only very briefly, but she's
What
there.
about the name Brexit cat?
Brexit cat. It's a Brexit cat because, as most cats, she always wants to get out of a door. She wants to get out. Then the door is being opened. Then she doesn't go out. She just stands in front of the door and is waiting and waiting and waiting until you close it. And then she's complaining again that she wants to go out and so on. So that's why it was a Brexit cat.
Exactly. Just wants the door to be open, but
Brexit.
Yeah.
Brexit.
Good. Okay.
Okay, SQL Server 2022 was announced at PASS Summit last year, or the GA was at PASS Summit last year, and has a lot of features that were talked about there, and some I remember, some I don't, to be honest. What I would like to know from you is there one feature that stood out where you would say that is a cool feature that I've been waiting for?
yeah, I've got one.
Okay.
Yeah. So the ledger. This might sound weird because for the longest time I thought, dear SQL Server, stop putting all these features in that database and just be an awesome database.
Yeah.
I'm starting to change my mind lately and think that SQL Server is actually a really cool database that has all these features that you won't get in simple databases like Postgres or something. Because yeah. So Ledger, why Ledger? I have a customer that does online auctions, and if you bid on something, that costs $10, it doesn't matter. But if you bid on something that is like a crane or a forklift or something that you bid on like 100,000 euros or something, and you think you're the highest bidder, but you didn't get it, and you sue the company, and a notary comes in and they have to see the proof that who actually had the highest bid and what was the order of bids and everything. So you need to show them your database. And then, of course, a database can be changed after records can be updated after the fact. So you have to do all this proof of what kind of software were you running at the time, and et cetera, et cetera. And with this ledger, you can just show like, hey, this was what was inserted in the table, and nobody changed it because that's not possible. So I kind of like that feature.
Okay. And apparently you pity with people, or you SQLPASS with people that still use on-premises databases. Actually, all my friends here, they are mocking about me because I actually do have customers that still use on-premise databases that haven't moved to the cloud 100%. They're still using local databases. And I guess especially if you're in this business of ledger, you have to actually prove what happened, that sort of stuff. This is something where you want to have the utmost control over your system, over your hardware. So probably it's going to be on-premise. Yeah, and so that's why I'm very happy that Microsoft actually brought out a new on-premise release. I mean, the main reason probably why they did this was mainly because if you buy software assurance, then for 3 years you can always install the latest version. And if you have the latest version and you wait for 3 years and there's no new version coming, then of course there's no benefit. Yeah, so at least every 3 years they have to put up something to make sure that people keep buying software assurance. But still, I think there are a lot of people working on premise, and as they always say, SQL 2022 is the bridge to the cloud. It brings the machine closer to Azure, and well, it does that very well. Yeah.
Best thing for me is obviously you can migrate much more easier if you use SQL 2022. Exactly. This is my favorite feature.
And you can migrate back if it's
really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And actually, you can do backup restore. Isn't that amazing?
Because you got your first bill.
Financial services exit strategy. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but the high availability failover to manage instance and then back again is a quite nice feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to the new big data clusters. So I signed up for the beta, and I was actually accepted into it, and then they removed that quite soon afterwards. And yeah, I didn't really work a lot on that beta. I did.
Mm-hmm. And you do have customers or people you work with are actually using big data clusters.
Not anymore, no. But yes, they were.
Obviously not anymore.
Yeah. No, but I work with, for instance, now I work with a public government organization that has to have data on-prem due to national security reasons and so forth. And of course, FREMS 2 and probably FREMS 3 in a couple of years stops them. So being able to give big data clusters or run Spark on-prem together with SQL sounds like it works, or it worked.
Have there been any improvements for big data clusters in SQL 2022?
Actually, they removed it completely.
It's a good improvement.
Get sensible. Get sensible. Discontinue it.
Yeah. No, but I think my favorite feature for now is the signups link for your SQL Server. And the reason for this is I'm not a huge fan of Data Factory. I'm far less of a fan of the signups version of Data Factory. So being able to do CDC on your on-prem servers to the cloud, to your analytics databases, is actually a quite nice feature, because then you can start doing ELT and don't have to think about, okay, do I need to run SSIS? Who knows SSIS these days? Or do I have to suck it up and go to Data Factory, which, or even worse, Azure Pipelines, or Synapse Pipeline, sorry, which I don't like at all. So I would rather have ELT and do DBT transformations triggering in SQL.
Too bad that this is not a DBT discussion.
Yes. I have other features instead of DBT. You don't even have to have run DBT in Synapse, but it works for its purposes.
So Marcus, you've also done a series of videos on SQL Server 22.
Yeah.
And you did some demos and stuff.
Yeah.
So which feature did you like to demo most?
To demo most?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was most fun to write? Where was the documentation best or worst?
Yeah. Oh. There's some. Actually, well, the most fun, so to say, is a feature that I haven't yet made a video about, because SQL 2022 can do polybase against Amazon S3 storage, which is, I think, pretty useful. I mean, for people that have, you know, multi-cloud strategy, whatever, you don't have to copy all this stuff to Azure. You can do polybase directly on Amazon S3 storage. And I thought, hey, great, let's get this running just for a short video. They cannot be longer than 10 minutes. So I'm going to make this running, show a simple example and so on. And as it turns out, everyone is talking about this feature, but nowhere have they documented the actual syntax on how to get at Amazon S3. There's no documentation about it. They're sometimes they're actually giving you the full SQL syntax, and they're saying, okay, it's supposed to start with S3 colon something, and then that's it. Then they blur it, or there's just a placeholder. Yeah. So I still couldn't get this work because no one tells you the syntax of how it works. Yeah. That
sounds like a fun feature.
That was a fun feature. I mean, it's going to be real fun when I get this running. Then, of course, I'm just going to show a very, very simple demo, because it's definitely just the same as doing polybase against Azure Blob Storage. But hey, why don't you document this? I mean, there's so much. It has been announced several times now. I really enjoy Bob Ward's presentations that he did, especially, I mean, you could definitely see that when he did the presentations at PASS Summit, they let him roam free. He was allowed, he was able to say everything he wanted. Later on,
I don't think you can contain Bob Ward, to be honest.
Not really, not really. But look at Ignite, for example. He wasn't even allowed the name of the session that he did that was 100% about SQL 2022. It didn't contain the name of the server. I'm a bit surprised that Microsoft doesn't do much marketing. They've never been good at marketing, but they don't do any marketing about SQL 2022. At least that's how I feel. And then at such an important conference, there's a nice talk from Bob Ward that gives you all the details, but I don't remember the name because it doesn't mention the product. Yeah, I mean, why is it so? Are they hiding it because it's an on-prem version? I don't know.
By the way, somebody has to activate your Windows. So Microsoft is in the room. We have to stop this now.
This is a new laptop that I got today.
I'll show you how to do this.
Yes, please.
Yeah, probably for everyone outside, you don't see that, but
there's
for Ben, it just popped up that he has to activate his Windows machine right now.
I'll probably do that sometime. I'll get around to it.
In your spare time.
Yeah, in my copious free time. What's interesting, I think, is that of the features that were mentioned now, there were basically no language features included.
There are.
And there are, in my opinion, there are language features that I find really interesting, that I really like, that I really missed in the past, and that really close the gap. So I find it interesting that those didn't come up. And I have a suspicion that this might be because many language features were already available in Azure SQL database before.
It might also be the fact that at least Andre and I are not DBAs or hardcore SQL developers, at least anymore.
I also see a lot of difference in Spark SQL and T-SQL these days, and I can understand why data warehouse people like language like Spark SQL. It has some interesting things that are just missing in T-SQL.
Yeah.
Like add a new column, add another new column, and give me all the other ones. Right? You don't have to type them out. Just do the remaining. Right? You can do that with and not a star. You can leave some out. You can rename a column, and then say give me the rest. There's some interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
What I like about the new language, and I bet I have a different one than you would pick. What I'm intrigued about in SQL 2022, the new language features, is the time series functions.
Yes.
I'm curious about those.
Yep.
Yeah, but they're totally stupid.
No, but they're there. That's first.
But they don't have much to do with time series. I mean,
you have a time bucket function. That's
date bucket. Date bucket is okay.
But that's a great step forward. I mean,
yeah, sure.
Thinking about the CTEs you had to write to select date buckets before.
Hey,
That was painful.
I agree. But then there is this other one. I made this nice little video about the SQL function called generate series, which is, to me, I mean, there might be interesting use cases, but generate series, what does it do? It's just a for loop that creates a table output, something like that. Yeah. I mean, it really doesn't make much sense, especially not in connection with time series. Yeah. Who would need this? But probably there are people.
That might have to do with the fact that you're a data warehousing person, and like things like time series are also interesting if you're using databases as application databases.
Yeah.
So that changes a lot of things, especially if you're working with time series data.
And not forgetting the fact that I think 2022 is the first version that is able to run on non-Intel processors. It's made for IoT edge applications as well. So it's natural that they actually bake in time series kind of functionalities into that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Plus, what I would like to mention about, of course, the time series functions are very basic at the moment. But if we're all older than 20 here, right? Look around the room. Everybody is older than 20, except perhaps.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, no. So if we think back, column store indexes. When we first got column store indexes,
Yeah.
would you say the first versions of column store indexes were great? Where you had to drop the entire index to insert new data?
Okay.
Was that a feature where you say, hey, this is a cool feature, I'm going to use that on a daily basis? To be honest, it sucked. It was the first version. It was okay performance-wise, but yeah, from a usability point of view, in my opinion, it sucked.
Well,
And
think about Nico Neugabauer, Ben, who did build half of his career on. I have a dog trying to get attention here, so yeah, you can see his face coming in here. But he built his entire career on column store, at least in the beginning, and he said column store 2012 was version 0.1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to think about the time series functions that we get now the same way.
Yeah.
I was excited about temporal tables and had a talk with Pedro Lopez, and he said 5 years application based. Now Microsoft doesn't know what temporal tables are anymore, I guess.
I think temporal tables were set in there because they needed to win a big deal with some gambling companies in Malta. At least that's what an engineer told me.
And the second feature, and I'm sure that that's one that that most people do not have like in focus, that I like a lot, is the new the improved JSON syntax, where you can create JSON objects while selecting. For an application point of view, if you're not talking about data warehousing, but if you're talking about an application database, to be able to create a JSON object without having to concatenate strings and stuff, for me, that's a huge improvement. I really like that this is getting better and better, because this is lots of use cases I see where you need that kind of tools, where you need to create JSON objects, and to not have to use an OR mapper in your software to get the JSON object, but to get it directly from the database. I think that's really a cool feature.
But did you check the performance of that? I'm really interested.
No, I didn't.
If that makes sense, because I also like it. And talking about SQL 2022 with an energy company on Tuesday, and I still wonder if that's ready for prime time. And I just don't know. It's not like I'm really sorry. I don't.
Is it more the size of the JSON objects that you're worried about?
No, more the fact that you create a lot of stuff during query. So that otherwise you would do the application code.
Oh.
It's the age-old idea of your SQL Server CPUs are probably the most expensive ones that you have, because you've paid licenses for it. So maybe you don't want to let it do everything. Right?
Yeah.
And I really wonder how this.
I didn't check on the performance yet. I just like that it gets better, that you have features like if a key is not, if a value is null, omit the key, or pass null as object as result. That you have these features, I think, is a huge improvement because it makes it possible to generate the JSON objects you need in your application.
And it's probably better than a big concatenate.
Yes, most likely much better than concatenate.
Do you know if these features are also one of those that were born in SQL Azure and then came down to SQL 2022? Do you know about?
I don't know.
Don't think so. So you actually think
before.
It has started in the on-premise version, which is surprising because I thought from now on the way would be new stuff will be developed in Azure, in SQL Azure. Then people are gonna use it, gonna test it, and then when it runs pretty well, they're gonna take it and then dump it into an on-premise.
I mean, it needs to be in at least SQL MI at the same time, at least with SQL 22. Otherwise, you wouldn't have file compatibility.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was much earlier. In the cloud versions.
MI is a different thing because it's the same engine. So apparently they must have the same commands.
So data testing is back to on-prem.
Yeah, data testing is back to on-prem, like in the old days.
This is probably also a marketing thing, right? If you want to sell somebody something, you start with the easy one. So you give them SQL DB and not with all the features. So if you have applications that you can move, go ahead and move them. But the complicated stuff, we'll do that later. Managed instance maybe and such. Like the first versions of Azure 15 years ago or 10 years ago, or was it? They had web apps. That was it, right? Not even VMs. And then they made VMs. So these things grow and you do the easy stuff first that you can move. That easier to sell. And then you do the complicated stuff later.
Big low-hanging fruit.
Maybe.
Yeah. Actually, there's a real favorite feature of mine that was, I think, is the last feature that didn't make it from Azure into SQL 2022 is this cool ability to execute REST APIs directly from a system stored procedure. This SP execute internal or external REST API stored procedure. Yeah, I mean, they really could have brought this into SQL 2022, but it's still in preview in Azure, but it works just fine. And I think from an architectural standpoint, together with the JSON functions that you like so much, together with that, there's a lot you can do with it. You know, think of all the stuff that you no longer need when your database is able to do the REST calls. And
you don't need this legacy product. What is it called? Integration services. Get rid of it.
For REST API.
Nothing happens to that anyway. So
yeah, you can call the REST API of Azure Data.
Yeah.
To replace the XP command shell data.
Of course, the most popular expansion is actually called an Azure function. Yeah, nice. But the world is full of exciting REST APIs. And why shouldn't my server be able to call them directly? And now when you use it in Azure SQL, you cannot call them directly because they're outside of Azure. You have to use API management in between, yeah, which is a pity in a way, because all I want to do is go out and call the
talk to enterprise customers.
I know.
DBA would be able to use something like this.
Yeah, DBAs love this feature.
Honestly, and architectural from this one, architecture standpoint, not good.
Yeah.
And the next question would be, how do I do this with an authenticated proxy?
Yeah.
There's a simple answer, not.
But then you're excluding all the enterprise.
Yeah.
True.
Be interesting to use these API calls to get rid of full text search and go to an actual text search engine, right? Get the results and then mix them, join them with something.
Yeah. That's right. I think we're going to see a lot more happening in this area because people are using it and they probably will be using it. I hope so. If they're not all enterprise customers, they will use it. And then that's really something that will broaden the mind of everyone. Yeah.
I can already see all the Azure Data Factory lovers go, REST calls in Data Factory is impossible. Well, it's hard. There is something, but it's weird. So let's just call a stored procedure that does it for me. Let's just use SQL Server as an engine for things. I've even seen somebody put SQL Server on an integration runtime so they can use XP command shell to do some pre-processing before they send the files over. Because Data Factory cannot do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's the point where the architect Johan decides to slowly fade into the background. Not think about the architectural impact of that.
Rage quit.
Did they improve anything in the column store in 2022? I didn't see it.
I don't think so.
Wasn't this sorting option first older?
Yeah,
You can
that's
say
this weird sorting option.
that you can say column store is be sorted by this column so that it's not random anymore, but I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, it came out. It was something I also wanted to do a video about it. No documentation, no way to make it work. Actually, there's from Brent Ozar, there's a long article online where he actually does in several steps, he tries to reproduce even the easiest examples of a sorted column store index, and it never works. Excuse me?
Use case. Use case.
Oh, actually, he
No,
explains it pretty well.
I think it's what you normally use because you have a special order. It does it the first time when you create it. It puts maybe the year at the beginning, and then you insert data like in a random order. Your data is flying in, and then it decides something different, and then you have a complete different index structure. But you want the buckets in the column store the way you had it the first time when you created this, and today you just throw it away and make it new.
Main purpose is still analytics use case, I would say. And I don't think that, let's say, a sorted index.
No, not the sorted index, the column store, the sorted column store itself. Like you do it the first time, you wanted it for performance, you do a normal index, have it sorted the way you want it, and then you say, make a column store out of it.
Okay.
And when you insert data and update data, this gets changed. Like if you don't
So
maintain
this reorganizes your existing non-column store index.
No, it doesn't reorganize, but the new things will have a different order.
Yeah.
And when you say you want this order, then you have the same structure for all the future data.
I mean, in a classical index, sort order is, let's say, good for primary and secondary key relationships, for ordering, and all. Let's say I don't get use case from
the elimination of row groups.
Can become faster, but the main thing is that memory is safe because it doesn't change all the time. So this is to be.
So column store is basically a fancy table scan, right? You don't have any non-clustered indexes on it. It doesn't know where to go. It just has to read everything until it has everything. So it's really good at skipping parts. It's a fancy table scan.
Yeah.
And if you've sorted everything, like skip everything in the beginning, then it can skip a whole lot more. It's going to be faster because it can leave whole blocks alone because nothing that you need is in there.
Yeah,
and
it's segment elimination. I think that's the thing. Just for a second, just for reference, maybe let me show. This is what I talked about. It's Brent Ozar talking about column store indexes that are finally sorted in SQL Server 2022. And if you scroll down this, he explains why they are there. And then it's every time again, he keeps saying something like this, doesn't work, still doesn't work, still doesn't. No,
but there is no documentation.
No, it doesn't work. And then he says it kind of works. And then he goes like, and it continues like that. And there's a lot of comments about this. It's also a lot of fun to read as usual. So you might be interested. I'm just for everyone who likes to read it. And he also explains why they would be nice to have if they work.
Also, only if you have parts of your table that you don't update anymore, right? Or else I don't know who still. Question for the on-premises people: are you still defragmenting your indexes? I hope not. That's not a thing anymore, right? We don't do that anymore. Rebuild index? I haven't done one in years. On-prem either.
I'm not a DBA. I never did that.
I cannot say my project's defrag or not.
Really? No, but you would realize when the performance goes down. Don't you think so?
That is out of my hand.
Oh, okay.
Every time the performance goes down, because a side effect of rebuilding your index is that the statistics get updated. So just update the statistics. I have lots of databases that are 99% fragmented. Nobody notices. Your disks underneath lie to you anyway. They don't put the data where you want it to. They put it where the Sun cache tells it to put it, right? Okay, well, how did we get here with the column store thing? Same thing, right? If you keep writing in it, you need to rebuild them every time. We're back at that.
So I remember the marketing slogan for 22 was the SQL Server with most Azure in it.
Oh, yeah.
So what are the features that give lead to that slogan? I mean, we had the availability groups. We touched those already.
We had Synapse link.
Link,
Then
yeah.
there is Purview.
You can also connect it to Azure, so you can log in with your Azure account. You can do
Um,
connectivity with your Azure account.
And Azure Arc. I think the main feature is Azure Arc. I'm not
Azure Arc
very
as well.
familiar with that, but I actually tried to. I managed to make it run. So it's one of the features that actually do work. I swear. Yeah, and that it doesn't do anything right now. I mean, Azure Arc simply right now, what it does is you can look up in your Azure portal. There's a SQL server there. Yeah, and it's probably doing a good job, but that's it.
No, it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
One thing that really shines with customers is Defender integration.
Okay.
Because you can, as soon as you have it in Arc, you can get Defender on top of it, and Defender does a pretty good job in scanning your databases.
That's
if
right.
you enable it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that will be really interesting for Arc is pay-as-you-go licensing. Because
and that comes
if you
together.
take the license terms serious, you will soon realize that you need to have licensed versions, so standard or enterprise, for a lot of databases which don't need to run 24/7. So, for instance, test databases for third-party products, because you can use developer for your test of your own software, but you cannot use developer for test of third-party software. So you need a licensed version, and then you need to license all your cores. And if you say, I only run this twice a month, pay-as-you-go is a really interesting model.
Good. Yeah. Is that offered right now?
Yes. For 22, it's offered right now. DG promised it will be available for anything up from 2016 soon.
Okay.
This already went out and it didn't work yet, but.
And again, I learned something today. Hey.
I think even that Defender now works without using Arc. You can just connect your SQL server to Azure, and then you don't have to use Arc. It uses Defender. You can log in with your Azure credentials, that kind of stuff.
But then it's dependent on Arc. Login with other credentials, you have to enlist in Azure Arc before that.
Yeah, you can install the Defender agent just on the machine. That
okay,
works.
But for
the problem is do this at scale.
Mm-hmm.
Do this with hundreds of servers where you don't know which of these have SQL or anything. So we have industrial customers. SKF is probably one of the best known and public referenceable cases. That have their SQL server in production lines, and they obviously don't want to go to the cloud with anything that's on the production line.
Yeah,
and they use that quite heavily, and they just roll out the Arc agent anywhere, and then just say deploy Defender, deploy policies. The policies, by the way, also really interesting. Say I want to have these and that settings across my whole fleet wherever it runs, and you can run it on GCP or AWS.
Yeah, that's also pretty interesting.
And you have one view wherever your database is.
Yeah, yeah. This multi-cloud thing with Azure Arc, that's actually impressive. Yeah.
Does anyone here? I mean, I know Johan, you work with huge customers. You obviously also work with huge customers. Does anyone have customers that actually have multi-cloud strategies in place that work? Because I have the feeling whenever my customers say multi-cloud, they say we have Azure, and somebody said we need to talk about AWS. But somehow I've never seen
the other way around,
or the other way around. Yeah. But I've never seen someone with a true multi-cloud strategy so far.
Usually smaller companies. I see smaller companies worry about that a lot. They're like, oh no, we need to be, because when Azure disappears, it's funny if a company with like 20 million revenue worries about a company with 100 billion revenue or something, right? They might disappear. Yeah, who knows? And they try to we use Kubernetes only, and the bigger companies that I see, they choose a cloud, and some departments use the other one, but the solution itself can run in one cloud. And you have to document what would happen if you had to move. like what would the cost be? Would you have to rewrite everything, or is it not that bad? And you have to get sign off on that. So you don't have to have a true multi-cloud thing, but there's something in there. They have to cover their
I
ass.
have a similar experience, but Georg just contradicted.
Also
Yeah.
assume. So first off, what is the definition of a multi-cloud strategy? So our big enterprise customers use all of it, and it's kind of that's a procurement type of things from time to time. Even if you're a bit unlucky and somebody is using, some companies using Office 365 very much, hey, BRS will be on AWS or so because we have this first Microsoft. My customer, they're using all three. Even here in Berlin, you know the customer, maybe you know the customer. He's handling Böhl from SQL Berlin is using Excel. But it depends. Let's say usual stuff is customer or it's a business unit decides which way to go.
Yeah, on
So
one cloud.
completely on AWS or completely on Azure.
Yeah, that's also what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The only thing I see is that is using Snowflake in a kind of so-called data mesh, which is not data mesh at all.
Johan is just experiencing pain, I think.
putting in all the SAP data, and then say, okay, you can use it in your Azure as environment as well. It's hosted on AWS.
Yeah.
Big pity. But then it gets extremely expensive for the cost to transport the data between clouds. It's something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
actually, I had a customer who actually got a pretty decent multi-cloud setup. Thing is, they love BigQuery. They prefer BigQuery for any of the other engines.
Exactly, that's what they do in Berlin.
Yeah. So, but what they did is this is a power producing company. So they have lots of streaming data and so on. So I can understand why they wanted to use BigQuery, but because it's expensive to push data, they egress costs from one cloud to the other. So what they do, they stream the data, the raw data, to both clouds. So they have Azure for everything else, and then BigQuery, Google. So they stream all the data that is being run for analytics to both Azure and Google because it's cheap storage, and then they just export the finished analytics result from BigQuery to Azure afterwards, and then build their analytics on top of that afterwards, and that works pretty well. But it's the only company I've seen that actually have a working multi-cloud setup that works for them.
So for me, I had a lot of banks as customers, and they at least believe they are forced by the regulators to be multi-cloud. And so every big bank has some kind of.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a finance customer who also believes they have to have multi-cloud strategy, but there it boils down to what Andre said. Basically, they say, yeah, we'll do this on Azure, but we need a documentation of what happens if we need to migrate it. But they're smaller, they're not like a big bank. So smaller customers, that works.
But in the end, usually it's then a split. So for instance, the customer says, yes, Windows SQL goes to Azure, and this whatever goes to GCP, and this old Linux stuff goes to AWS, and
Makes sense. This is something I see as well, because let's say we now have a foot in Siemens Energy because of their legacy applications, which use, for instance, as a base, and that the idea would be nice, let's say, to go to the vendor, but they started their big data projects on Snowflake as well. The guys. And so yeah, I see other accounts as well. So usually they try to include everything. A bit of Google from time to time, like BigQuery is used by some of our customers. AWS is ahead, I would say, mostly still, because we are a bit late, but let's see.
But let's do a little bit marketing here. Isn't it fantastic that Microsoft is the only company that still offers this on-premise stuff, that really has a good offer on-premise? I mean, isn't that great?
It will be open source. So
yeah, I mean,
and Oracle.
And Oracle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, they're surprisingly strong. Like
I know.
In the cloud also? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, because Microsoft's actually pretty strong, be it on-premise or in the cloud. Yeah, and SQL 2022 is actually connecting it even better than before. So
it does, and the real thing is really to have cloud features on-premise. That's very unique with Arc, because another big bank came to us and said, yes, we have this problem that Department A does GCP, Department B does AWS, Department C does whatever, and I don't want my admins to need to create 4 different database services.
Yeah.
So please help us with SQL MI on Arc, and then we do the same thing across all the clouds.
Yeah.
Would be cool that if would be cool that in the days of with SAN, a good SAN on-prem can do a failover without you even noticing it, right?
Yeah.
Would be cool that that you had that towards Azure, like, oh yeah, by the way, you're running in Azure. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
We're not there yet.
No.
So I will check that in my customer for the first, I think, 2 weeks ago. So I learned that using a mixture of Azure and is this called Oracle Cloud?
Yeah, OCI.
OCI, exactly. Yeah. And so, and I don't know if you know, so they are building their data centers close to ours. Yeah. And so there's a direct line between Azure subscriptions and there. And obviously works quite well. I hoped for some reasons, for IT security and so on, complicated IT sec stuff also, our customer wouldn't allow it, but they do.
So they also are
Clever.
Only the first project I've seen. I think G-Center also.
So we just have to bring more exciting features into SQL 2022 that don't exist in Oracle.
2024.
Yeah, no, 2025, 3 years.
Yes.
3 years until the next version of the server, because then with software assurance, you benefit from it.
But you realize that it's first version, it took 3 years.
Yeah, the others were.
Because all the others were 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
If you take the R2 versions.
Yeah.
Something serious.
That's right, yeah. It takes some time.
Last time it was 3 years, was between 2005 and 2008.
Yeah.
I remember 2005 coming out at the PASS Summit in Seattle, where they had like a basket lying around with CDs or DVDs in it. And the waitress in the bar at the Sheraton was dragging around extension cords because all the geeks were on their laptops installing SQL. So it was a weird zombie thing.
That's why what I'm worried about, what I'm missing. I mean, this is a new version of SQL Server. In the old days, we would have road shows, people traveling around, everyone coming together, having all kinds of exciting presentations, and that's all gone. I mean, on Ignite, they don't even mention the name of the product. Yeah, and so I think that was a bit more excitement in the old days.
Yeah, because now everything is cloud.
A lot is cloud, but not everything, and that's what SQL 2022 proves. Yeah, there's still a lot going on premise, and it's amazing stuff, and it can do almost the same, in some cases even more, as we said today, on premise than is possible in the cloud.
So I hear Marcus is an on-premise advocate.
Yeah.
In a way.
I remain a cloud believer.
Yeah, my customers make me do it with money.
If you're a customer would move away from SQL on-prem. I would go to PostgreSQL, whatever.
Yeah.
I would move to Unix, Linux. So I don't see any reason. So it's kind of hard to keep those guys.
Yeah, true. It's a really strong competitor. PostgreSQL, pretty strong. Yeah.
We also, Uwe, Ricken and I did this. Uwe claimed that he would be able to have SQL perform time series queries faster than timescale extension.
Oh.
I don't know how good this is, but
he was wrong by a factor of 10.
It's surprisingly good. Yeah.
It's surprisingly good. Yeah. But we found out that just after we did this test, the new date bucket feature came, and we tested with that, and that actually improved things. As compared to those large CDs that he had written before.
By the way, this is one feature on my wish list that I would have, an extension.
Exactly.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
extension concept for SQL Server. That would be a cool thing.
Exactly.
That would be
learn from Postgres.
Yeah.
Do regex. Could extend if you know get problems with Teradata in one project, couldn't migrate because they have been using a regex extension. I tried this with scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
SQL could do it. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely.
But not with
And there was this feature that was shown at the PASS Summit, and that's the last thing that I would like to briefly mention that made me sad. And that was this AI writing SQL code.
Yeah, cool
Stuff. For me, that felt really sad.
Hmm.
I don't know. Somehow it felt like I don't want to be replaced by a robot.
Did it work?
It was a video. I don't know how well
Okay.
it worked. So maybe Bob was sitting on the other side typing the code or something. We don't know.
And please write a SQL statement. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you have to give it the
I
table
would-
structure.
I
with it.
wouldn't be surprised. if it couldn't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Why not?
But
Please.
did you see that part of the presentation at the summit?
Yeah, that's GitHub Autopilot, I think.
Yeah.
And I saw a blog post last week because I mean everybody's talking about ChatGPT on LinkedIn. But there was somebody who'd actually done a combination of writing the code in Autopilot and then getting ChatGPT to document it afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was scarily effective, but I think that guy as well. I agree with him. Was that it's helping developers improve their code and improve their documentation, but it will be a while yet until it actually can replace us, because there's too much going on in the background. And I mean, at least ChatGPT, it gets better the more it is able to lie. So yeah, I'm not worried about my job just yet.
No.
And
And
who
I just do PowerPoints anyway, so it's fine.
Who wants to do documentation? So there's a chat bot can do that for me. That's nice.
That would be a great prompt. Write a documentation about this database.
Yeah, then you need to give it more information. But that's as usual. The more information.
Just the schema and then
Yeah.
explain how this database. I never tried that.
Yeah.
Need to do
That must be, yeah, but you have to give it the database schema and
Yeah,
but apart from
obviously.
that, it should work. Yeah. Hopefully. Maybe not.
Okay, then I think we can close the discussion and let our two guests enjoy the rest of the evening.
So we're closer to the beer than you are, huh?
Yeah, well, this is right around the corner, so
Yeah.
don't worry. We'll get and there's people drinking beer already here, so.
Excellent.
There is.
So thank you for taking your time for joining us today.
No problem. No problem.
That was fun.
Quite having you here. And I hope that we'll have you here in person someday for a presentation.
I
Here?
would love to. There's
Yeah.
the train station is 5 minutes bicycle ride away, and there's a train going straight to where you are. So
Yeah, Potsdam is 10 minutes down the road from here. So for you, that's a bit more difficult.
I have a train station about 5 minutes drive away, but it's still a nightmare to get to Berlin by train. So it's
Yeah. But we'll figure out a way.